Hello, everyone. Welcome back. My name is Jenna.
My name is Hannah, and today we have another guest music therapist with us. If you want to go ahead and introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Jayne Standley. I'm Director of Music Therapy at Florida State University, and I have been a music therapist for over 50 years.
Awesome. Thank you, Jan. So tell us a little bit about why music therapy. What inspired you about the profession?
Well, early on, there were only a few schools in the United States that had a degree. At the time I went to school, there were 5. I just happened to go to one of those, and I was naive as a music major. I didn't realize on the first day that I needed to audition for placement for applied lessons. I didn't know I needed a music major. I thought I was a music major. And when people would ask me these questions, I was clueless. And when they asked me what I wanted to major in music, I really didn't have an idea. And so they let me be general and told me I needed to explore that for the first semester, but then I needed to decide. And I was walking down the hall and saw an advertisement for Alpha Mu, the student music therapy organization at Florida State, and thought that was an intriguing concept. And I went to that meeting. There were only about 8 therapy majors at that time. They were all at the meeting. It was a wonderful way to meet other students in the College of Music, but I was fascinated with what they were discussing and what they saw as aspirations for what they wanted to do with a career. And I had planned to be a nursing major at the University of North Carolina before I just had this epiphany that I could not give up music in my life. And I decided to go to FSU. And I just felt so fortunate that when I got there, there was a degree program. It was one of the first 5 established in the United States. And I switched my major immediately and have been a music therapist aspirant or career person ever since.
So that's interesting, since you kind of started at the same place that you're now running and working at.
Yes.
What have you seen really grow? Obviously, it could be a lot of things, but when you started taking over the program, what was something that you really wanted to bring to the experience?
Well, I was fortunate to go through the program with wonderful faculty people who taught us to be curious and to question and to try to use discussion as a way of evolving music therapy, because there were no textbooks. Nobody had written any books yet. People were going to conferences and they were writing articles about what they did in their particular setting. I had a fantastic internship in Princeton, New Jersey, and I learned from the many wonderful speakers that they brought in about pure therapy skills, and was striving to try to apply music principles that would allow me to be therapeutic in the same way that other professions seem to be therapeutic. I had had several jobs. I had worked with several types of populations. And when I got the opportunity to come to Florida State, I really thought, it's time for research, it's time for textbooks, it's time to follow the model of other professions that are very specific about linking an intervention to a specific client problem, and being very assured that the music technique that I intended to do would produce therapeutic outcomes for someone based on what their needs were. And that involved the idea of assessment, and that based on an assessment, you make a determination of what intervention to do. That was what I saw as the future of becoming an academic person in the field, and also just how to teach the competencies. How do you teach young people to transition from being musicians into therapists who use music? So I kind of was fortunate to be in an area that at Florida State that emphasized research and questioning and curiosity. And that's really been a theoretical basis of my career that I've truly enjoyed. I've also gotten to do all of the clinical development of the medical music therapy program with our local hospital that I have loved, based on trying to implement the most cutting edge techniques that are coming out of the research. And I see all of that growing all over the United States, and all kinds of music therapy, that clinicians are changing their skills related to specialization now, which I find really exciting.
I would love to hear you speak on advocacy a little bit and how that is shaped, how it's changed over the years, because I can imagine, as somebody who was in a class of 8 people and there was no textbooks, that advocacy was a big thing, and it still is a huge thing in music therapy today. So what was that like for you?
Yes, you're exactly right. And I've spent my whole life answering the question, what is music therapy? When you tell people that that's what you're involved with. I have watched the transition happen. It took years and years, but now today I say I'm a music therapist. People say, oh, I love the concept of that. I read about that, or I saw a video on YouTube. People today know what music therapy is. And that was truly wonderful when that first started happening. And people come to school seeking what they think music therapy is, but they have a really good idea, and they have choices of lots of degree programs. There are over 70 degree programs in the United States, and they have choices of lots of textbooks and lots of models of music therapy. But in every profession, I don't mean profession, I mean clinical agency, type of clinical agency, you have to teach the professionals in that agency how music therapy can be helpful. When you're in the hospital, you have to teach the doctors and the nurses. When you go to hospice, you have to teach the nurses in hospice and the doctors in hospice, because they have a different objective, and you have to teach the social worker. And when you go into special ed, you have to teach the other teachers, and you're constantly articulating, if this client has this problem, here is something I could do for the client, or here is a way I could co-treat with you, another professional, to allow this client's learning to be facilitated. So I think that you become adept at advocacy, and you can speak to anyone. You can speak to a senator at the Capitol when you're asking for music therapy to be included in national legislation, or you can speak to a parent with a child, or you can speak directly to a patient in hospice about what music therapy might be able to do for them. There are different ways of articulating music therapy to each of those audiences, but you do it so much throughout your career. I think you become adept, and you just adopt it as part of the challenge. One of the exciting things is music therapy is always expanding into new areas. Whatever human needs are identified as being critical at the moment, or we're having an epidemic of this, or this is something that has recently happened as a crisis. There are creative people that find new ways to use music to address those issues and develop whole new career areas for people to get jobs in. It's ever expanding across the 50 years that I've been in music therapy. It's been amazing to watch the expansion into different client agencies, types of clients in different agencies. So I think that's the role of advocacy constantly. Is I know what a music therapist is. I feel I'm really good at describing to you, the person who doesn't know, what I can do in any given setting for any type of client problem.
How do you teach that to students that might be new to the profession, those advocacy skills, so that they feel confident doing that themselves?
I talk constantly about, in each area of therapy, if we're doing a section on learning to do music therapy with mental health clients versus another section with hospice clients, I talk about the past experiences with advocacy within that field and within the professionals in that field. I talk about the anecdotes that interns who are currently in the field trying to find their way to deal with those types of client problems. That I talk about the anecdotes they're sending me of what kind of advocacy they need to do. I teach people how to do education within their agency, to take the initiative. If I'm coming into your agency as a new person, that I schedule an opportunity to talk with people in an educational setting or a workshop setting within that agency, but that I also am meeting people, new therapists. And as I find what they're interested in, I don't start by telling you what I can do for you, but I find out what you're interested in and what your agency really wants for their clients and what the client needs are. And when you bring up your passion for what you're trying to do for the client, I try to match that and tell you what I could join you in doing to further your particular goals as a professional and helping those individuals. And then I differentiate what I could also do by myself, that I could help you with this, but I could also be doing this for other people or other problems within the agency.
Can you speak a little bit about the uniqueness of Florida State's program and what really students are looking for in your program, as well as what you're looking for in potential music therapy students?
Sure. I think we are unique in many ways. We have a large faculty, and that is a wonderfully exciting way to go through the program of dealing with many people with many different interests and culturally diverse individuals who are teaching current and up-to-date information. We also have 8 doctoral students who are all experienced music therapists who also teach from their areas of expertise and who are working with students on clinical skills. We have high productivity of research. We have people who are not only teaching, but they are still being curious and asking questions about improving interventions or designing new interventions. We have about 40 master's degree students at one time. All of those students, almost all of them, are doing theses, and the doctoral students are doing dissertations, and the faculty are doing research. So there's a huge opportunity to get involved in assisting someone with research or observing research or discussing it, where we're in a seminar, but people with multiple levels of clinical experience and research experience are talking about the most cutting edge ideas in the field of music therapy. So I think our classes, our curriculum at the undergrad level, it's all sequenced. We have freshman classes versus sophomore classes versus junior classes. And we see that competencies as being cumulative. So we have standards for each class, and you add standards each year. And we think that that's a very organized way to go through the curriculum. When you get to grad school, you're in with people with multiple levels of experience, but mostly at the undergrad level, you're going through at the same pace. Beside those emphases on research, we run the medical program at the local hospital, TMH, Tallahassee Memorial. And we started with nobody when we wanted medical practica to teach students how to work in a hospital. We got permission for the students to come in, go to the nurse's station, get a patient's room number and a reference for something that might be done. A patient on the cancer unit might be in pain, and the nurse might say, go down to this room and try to help this person with pain. The person would go in and do the therapy session and come immediately and talk with me about what they had done. We eventually got one music therapist, and then the hospital loved music therapy. And we now have 7 full-time music therapists plus a $100,000 a year grant to run a full-time NICU music therapy program. So we give the certificate in NICU training based on research and based on clinical intervention of bringing people into the hospital and showing them the fragility of a premature baby in a NICU. All of our students can get that certificate through the coursework and through working in the local hospital. We also, after being 50 years of being a degree program, we have professional music therapy in every agency in the city. We have NICU music therapy in every children's hospital in the state of Florida. We have medical music therapy in almost every not-for-profit hospital in the state of Florida. We have spread music therapy throughout the community, and it's so prolific. As I move about Tallahassee now, I will meet someone and they say, what do you do? And I say, I teach music therapy at FSU. Oh, how my child had music therapy. Or, oh, my mother-in-law had music therapy at the hospice. It was so wonderful. Everyone I meet in Tallahassee has had music therapy, or their families had music therapy, and everyone knows what it is. And our students can stay in town and have lots of choices for internships, but they also can do practica there. And many of them go out of town to experience other venues, but we have lots of options, I think, which makes Tallahassee kind of a unique place.
Yeah, for sure. That sounds like an incredible, huge program, lots of opportunities. That's great to hear. And good to hear that, like you're saying, so many people know what music therapy is, and that's such a huge part of it.
It's really wonderful. It's really wonderful to see. We have several private practices in town, not just music therapy and agencies, but private practices. One of them hires 8 has full-time, a music therapist full-time working for them. So we have very large music therapy agencies in the city of Tallahassee.
What would you say your biggest advice is for people who are looking to maybe expand either their educational program, internship programs in colleges to make it as big and as successful as yours is? How do you feel like the best way to go about that is?
Well, I think it's really critical to get music therapists in the community employed. And then you have practicum sites, and we have wonderful relationships with all of our music therapists in town. They donate their services to supervised practicum students. We do not pay them. But they see themselves as part of the Florida State family of preparing students to offer opportunities. And because the curriculum is sequenced as people go through, we can say at the sophomore level, you're ready for this type of placement where maybe you're going to be working mostly with a group and you don't have to be the musician all by yourself with no place to hide like you do in a hospital room that's just one-to-one. There's just you and the patient. And if you can't do the music or don't know the music they like, you're going to have a difficult problem. So we save that until your competencies in guitar and repertoire are strong enough, and then we allow you those opportunities. So at each level, I think the practicum supervisors love the opportunity to help young people get started, and it enriches their program. And all of our sites also have internship. So I would say to academic people, that advocacy you were talking about earlier, being in the community and advocating for agencies to hire music therapists to build your program and to try to build your faculty with varying areas of expertise, people who have backgrounds in working with different kinds of client groups or do research in different areas so that your students have those options. I know that some universities are doing online courses, and there's the opportunity to Zoom and do music therapy on the internet. I don't think it's as effective as being in the room and being face to face with people, but I do think it is enriching if you're in a place where there are not as many opportunities for practica to be involved with clients. So I would just encourage the faculty to explore the textbooks and the variety of textbooks that are out there, also to bring those things into the classroom that offer lots of information to your students about how to be a music therapist. I think it's wonderful we have textbooks and we have choices these days.
So speaking in kind of the area of collaboration now, as I can imagine would be a large part of a lot of those practicums and internships that you're talking about, how is that something that you discuss in the classroom? Is that something that you discuss as classes? Like, this is the role of a nurse, this is what this interaction might look like with them, or is that something that is kind of more individualized to them? How do you really teach that collaboration so that they feel prepared to go in there and provide that?
Well, I teach the year-long methods course, the senior year, that prepares people for internship. And so we go through all of the different client groups and we spend a certain amount of time on each one. And we spend an entire semester on all the counseling skills. And we have practica affiliated with what we're studying in the classroom. So that if we're studying mental health, you can actually be working with a music therapist with mental health patients in the community. So we start with that. But everything is approached from the perspective of the client. It's client-centered. In mental health, what are the diagnoses? What are the characteristics of a diagnosis? When somebody needs mental health treatment, what are they there for? What are they seeking? And how do you know where to start? And once you identify through assessment and the diagnosis and the treatment team's approach to what they think are the primary things this person needs, then we start with the collaboration, how to be a good interdisciplinary team member, how to speak up to say, I can do that, when they say this client is having problems with this particular area and it's not speech therapy's area and it's not social work's area and nobody has time to do that. I could do that with music therapy. And so showing some initiative, and when everyone focuses on the same thing, like a child that is working on learning to walk and the physical therapist is focusing on motivating this child to get through the repetitions and the pain that might be there in terms of trying to learn to become ambulatory, that you jump in and say, here's how music therapy could help. We know this is a primary area. Physical therapy has the forefront of deciding how this is to be taught, but I can help with motivation. You're having difficulty with that. Let me come in and co-treat with you. Let me just show you in one session. You tell me what you want the child to do, and I will show you how I can motivate that person. And then we will talk about, do you want me to continue doing that? Do we need to put it on the schedule? Or could I just come in and time to time and show you a new music activity that would motivate the next level of what you would like to do as the physical therapist? So I can be a collaborator by being a consultant. I can be a co-treatment collaborator where with every session we're going to combine music therapy with the other area. I can be an initiator of an objective that everybody says is a problem for the client, but nobody knows who has time to teach that. I could help you with that. So we go from the perspective of being a good interdisciplinary team member for that population group and how to collaborate with all the professionals within the facility.
In terms of supervision with interns and with other therapists or educators, what do you find that your supervision style is, and what do you try to integrate when you're supervising other professionals?
Well, I think my supervision style is a teaching style. I teach, and I teach a competency as opposed to trying to supervise a person that they're right or wrong, or that they're late to school, or all of those other issues. I try to say, this is what you need to learn in this class, this semester. This is what you need to learn. And our classes are individualized. If you already have 98% of the basic competencies for that class, we're going to push you to start there and to add additional, more sophisticated competencies in this particular area, because we're going to give you feedback individually. And based on what you're doing, we're going to give you feedback and new challenges to move you forward, and to find out from you, what is your primary purpose in taking this class, and what are you trying to learn? But we have basic competencies. We think there's a way of being very specific about how to teach it and give adequate feedback, and to let a person know exactly what they need to tweak or to do. Now, what we find is different styles work better with different people. And we have so many different people working with a student at the same time. I'm teaching the class, but when they go in the community, they're being supervised by a clinical music therapist who is watching them do what I tried to teach them in class. And that clinical supervisor will call me and say, this person is fantastic at this, this, and this, but they just can't make eye contact. And we've talked with them about that. I'm going to bring that person in and have a consulting session where I say, I'm going to teach you to make eye contact. And we're going to work specifically on that, and then tell them what to do when you go back to the clinic next time. You convince that supervisor you're making eye contact. That's your new goal for what you're going in there to do. So the teaching focus on being specific about what you're trying to teach to the student's subjective, and then giving feedback to the individual from many, many different perspectives. We even have the luxury of, if you don't get it the way I'm teaching you, and you don't get it from the supervisor, and both of us are saying the same thing, you just are not doing this, we have the luxury of saying to one of the doctoral students, do you have time to work with this student to see if you have an intervention that would allow the person to get a little more information about how to do this? So we just keep honing in on the competency you need to learn, and the feedback that we can give you in all the different realms that we have available to do that.
I'm curious to hear you speak a little bit about education and how that became a passion for you. If that was something very early on that you knew that you wanted to be a part of education, or did you figure that out later? And how does that tie into research and publications?
I loved being a music therapist. I came back to school after about 3 years as a clinician to get a master's degree. I loved discovering research and did a thesis and enjoyed that process, but couldn't wait to get back after spending a year in school doing a master's degree. I couldn't wait to get back to being a clinician. It never occurred to me that I could be a faculty member. I never aspired to a PhD. I never thought that I had the talent as a musician to get a PhD in a field like music therapy. And then I found out I could get a PhD in special ed, which I had a real passion for, which is what I did. But I have a master's degree in music therapy. A faculty mentor contacted me and said, you need to go to school and get a PhD. You should be a faculty member. And I said, no, no, no. I argued for 3 hours with this individual of why I should be a therapist. And the person just kept saying, you need to do this. Best decision I ever made, to trust that person and finally just say, okay. I was very unsure of myself, and I had never aspired to do it. I couldn't see myself in the role. I mean, how many music therapy faculty people were there with only 5-degree programs in the nation? I mean, I didn't see myself doing that. Anyway, by the time I got back to FSU to be a faculty member, I had been a clinician. I had been promoted to an administrative position. I was supervising 14 counties of all the human services in the state of Florida for everything. The superintendents of the institutions, everything except the school special ed programs, which were in the school system. But I supervised all the sheltered workshops. I supervised all the special ed children that were not living at home, that were living with foster parents. I had become an administrator with a beeper with emergencies at 2 o'clock in the morning, and I hated it. And I had lost my joy for being a clinician. And so when I got the opportunity after finishing my PhD to go to Florida State, I decided that I would become a faculty member and view teaching the way I viewed working with clients, that it was a matter of setting objectives and helping people learn, whether you were in an agency getting help for a problem or you were a student trying to learn how to deal with new information. And that became my joy, watching students make progress and to hear from people at internships that they were doing a fantastic job at working with clients, and that the students themselves loved being music therapists. So I made that transition very difficultly until I actually got into teaching and then took on the role in doing that. And I was told, if you're going to teach at Florida State, you must publish or you will not get tenure. It's a very high standard for publication. And I had already loved research, so that's how I got into doing research on a regular basis. It was just expected, and therefore I did it, but I grew to really love it. And my first few years, I was doing research mostly in special ed and sometimes mental health and sometimes just philosophies of music therapy. And then I discovered the opportunity for NICU work, and boy, that was my thing. I've been doing it for over 20 years. I really focused. And once I got focused, it was fantastic for me. I enjoyed it, and I felt like it contributed something to the field of music therapy.
I'm curious how, after getting into research and getting into education, you kind of found a balance between being a clinician and an educator and a researcher and outside of work in terms of having a family and keeping your balance in personal life. What did you feel like that process was like for you in trying to keep and wear all these different hats?
I think that is the epitome for any woman who has a career. Any woman, whatever your career is maintaining that balance. So I made some choices. I tried to be organized and to plan carefully and to separate my family life from my career life. But for a while, I was a single parent, and the days I would be driving my child to school, and she would say, "Oh, Mom, we're supposed to bring the cookies today." And I'm going, "Today? It's 8:15. You're due at school at 8:30. What cookies are we bringing today?" And then we're going to Publix to go by the deli to the bakery to try to buy cookies, and all the other mothers are baking them, and you're going, "Oh, I'm a failure as a mother," kind of thing. So I tried to teach my daughter how to be organized, also to give me a heads up if something was going to be happening that I needed to know about. But I don't answer email on the weekends. I don't deal with phone calls. I tell all of my students, I'm there for you if you have an emergency, truly an emergency. But I will put you on hold until the week starts if it's not an emergency. I just got an email this morning. I'm on summer vacation. I'm not paid in the summer. I'm getting ready to go to Vancouver for the World Congress. And I got a message from a student who's a junior who wants to do what the senior students are doing with me. And do I have time to sit down and talk with her? And could she come observe music therapy at the hospital? And I am thinking, you need to be taking downtime. Don't you realize that summer, I could do this for you when school starts, that we could sit down and have this discussion, even if it's the first day of school. But no, I'm not going to be doing that right now. So my balance comes from having barriers for certain kinds of things and separating home life from school life, setting aside time for research and writing and actually doing it. When I have time to write, I actually do the objective, even if, oh gosh, I didn't get to it, it's 10 o'clock at night, but there was something I was going to do to edit that chapter. I'm going, because it was on my schedule for today, I'm going to sit down and do it before I go to bed, because I have to do that to keep everything balanced. As you say, I might get a little less sleep, but I finish each day what I was organized enough to do, to schedule, and spend time at the office to be with students and those kinds of things, but take time to write and do books and publish articles also. So scheduling, giving up on the guilt trip about not being a good mom because you didn't make homemade cookies, and being perfectly happy with Publix cookies.
I don't think that the kids probably noticed.
You know, I think no matter the age of the women or whatever, because primarily care of others is still in our culture assigned to women, whether it's care of your parents or grandparents or your own children or helping someone you know that needs assistance. I just think we are scheduling more activities than most other people are.
Transitioning a little bit more into internships, I would love to hear you speak about, what do you notice people are looking for when interns are going to apply for an internship? What are some skills that are really important for interns to have? And maybe some feedback that you've heard over the years of those things that are really being addressed in internships, those growth areas.
When they start trying to think about where they might intern or where they might apply to, I think they're just generally frightened. It's unknown. They start doing practica, they get a little more secure. After a few practica, people come in and say, I know what I want to do in life. I want to intern in this, and then I want to get a job in this. And they are very secure at moving forward from there. So helping them with that transition of imagining what internship would be like and trying to select a place, teaching them how to do an interview with an internship supervisor, and teaching them how to get information, talk to other interns, talk to people who've been ahead of you in the program that might have considered that internship, go to a conference and meet that supervisor before you're actually doing the interview, get informed so that you can make the best decisions for you. And then when people have two offers and look at me and say, which one should I select? I say, I've been teaching you for 4 years how to make decisions about your own life. And this is where you're going to make one. So which one makes you happy? Which one fulfills your goals? And they want to guarantee, I don't know which one is best. And I said, whichever one you decide is best, and help the person make a decision through that process. What I find over all the years I've been supervising interns, we almost never have a student that fails internship, because we have been screening and preparing and making sure that all the basic competencies are met. If there's a problem, it's never a problem of being an incompetent music therapist. It's they don't get to work on time. They don't turn in the paperwork that's required. They don't learn the new songs they were asked to learn. It's work habits and their own social skills. Like if they party too much on the weekend and can't get into work on time on Monday morning, it's resistance sometimes to learning something new. Like, I didn't know I was going to have to learn to do that. What do you want me to do? As opposed to, I'm here to learn from you, teach me what I need to know. So let me tell you one anecdote. I had a supervisor from one of the hospitals call me and say, we have an intern we're about to toss out on her ear. She has been here for 1 month. We have been asking her to do one task in the mornings, and we have repeatedly asked her, she just will not do it. And I said, what is the task? And they said, well, we want her to get here at 8 o'clock because everybody else comes in at 8:15. And we need to know first for the schedule for the day, what music therapists need to go to the cardiac intensive care unit, just the way the hospital runs. We need to do that first. So somebody needs to phone cardiac ICU and ask the head nurse who's got a referral for music therapy today and get that information of a patient name and room number. And she won't do it. And I said, she won't phone the cardiac unit. She has yet to make a phone call for a solid month. We have been asking her to do this. We come in at 8:15. It has not been done, and we have to do it. And I said, okay, have her call me. And I said, you're about to get failed from an internship for failing to make a phone call. Why are you not doing this that they have repeatedly asked you to do? She said, I don't know how to use a telephone. Nobody uses a phone to talk on a phone. And I said, oh, good grief. It's not difficult. You pick up the handle, the earphone, and you punch the button for the number, and you say hello, and you ask the question, write this down. Are any people referred for music therapy today? Write down that question. You're going to ask that question. And when they tell you, you're going to write down the answer. I said, you have 15 minutes to make a phone call or you're fired from this internship. Okay. That solved the problem. But I'm sitting there as a faculty member thinking, this person invested 4 years, money, coursework, practica, got to an internship, and the only thing you can think is, why would she not be doing that? Because she's resistive. She's resistive. I'm a young person. Young people don't talk on the telephone, but music therapists do. People in hospitals do. People use email. I hear my students say, we don't do email. Yes, but when you become a professional, all the professionals do email. It's a professional skill you need to learn. So I can cajole you and tell you, well, this is something you'll do as a professional. But if somebody doesn't realize you need to be cajoled and they just tell you and you become resistant, you've damaged that relationship at that moment, especially if you just refuse to do what needs to be done. So I find that those are the problems that interns have, whatever they're looking for in terms of their training, is to learn not to be resistant to being asked to do new things, just learn how to do them. The other thing I find is really great students who do a wonderful job and make A's and everything hate to be evaluated in an internship. There's one internship we send people to where the supervisor gives everybody a C the first 3 months because that's average, and everybody who's just learning and you're in your orientation is average. After the first 3 months, the next 3 months, I'm going to evaluate you as a clinician. I'm going to give you a grade then. I have people call me from that internship. I tell them before they go, but they're so offended when they get a C. They've never gotten a C. And I say, remember, we discussed this. And it's almost like, I'm going to quit this internship. I'm going to quit the profession. No, it has nothing to do with how you're doing. It's the way the supervisor does the grades. So learning to separate yourself and your history as a student, I think the academic calendar doesn't teach you what you need to know in work habits. It doesn't teach you working 8 to 5 days a week, be there early on Monday morning. It doesn't teach you you're going to get 2 or 3 weeks off for Christmas. You're going to get maybe Christmas Eve and Christmas Day, unless the internship gives you extra days. It doesn't teach you the real world, and people have a difficulty making a transition. And we try to teach many of those things in classes, especially teaching students now how to do email, because we're going to require it of you. And by the time you become a professional, you'll be used to it. But the attitudes of student coming in is, I don't do that. I'm a young person. Only old people do those kind of things. You go, no, back in the agencies where you're going to work, you're going to be doing that. So
I do feel like a lot of the interns that I've had experience with, the biggest transition has been the professional skills and not necessarily the therapeutic skills, but just being able to sustain for 8 hours a day, 5 days a week, and all that.
Yes, yes. And going to class for an hour and going home and taking a nap doesn't teach you how to do that. And you've been doing that your whole life, K through 12, and then 4 years of school, and you're ingrained in life is brief. It happens in intense spurts, an hour for a class, and then you're free for the rest of the day. And life is just not like that. And many students really have a difficulty with the transition. Some students are wonderful, just they can adapt to anything. So that's another core concept what we teach starting at the beginning of the year, that this whole year is going to be about adaptation, and that we're going to teach clients how to adapt, but we're also going to be teaching ourselves how to adapt. I also start the senior year asking the students, when do you think you will be an adult? And they all look at me like, an adult? It hasn't really occurred to them. I said, well, do you think the therapist that you go to for help should be an adult? And they go, well, yeah. I said, so when you're in a practicum working with a client, you're an adult? Everybody say yes. Yes, you're being an adult. That you quit viewing yourself as the student, as the learner, but the person who is the adult, who is in charge of this moment, this song. I'm in charge of this song and this interaction and this opportunity to connect with this patient, and I'm showing the initiative of my training to be able to do that and not waiting for someone else to do it for me, and just changing that mindset a bit for people.
What is some advice that you give to individuals who might be looking for a new job, who might be a new professional entering the professional world? What do you suggest to them when they have a list of non-negotiables? Where do you say, okay, these are things that you can keep important? What are things that they might have to be a little bit more flexible on? And how do you help them find that balance for each individual person? Because it's different for each person.
It is different for each person. It's a wonderful time right now to be looking for a job. There are way more jobs than there are music therapists, and our students are getting jobs a month or two before they graduate. They are already employed by the time they walk across the stage. And then we get notices of jobs asking, don't you have anybody? We're trying so hard to get a music therapist. I think the whole field loses out when we convince hospitals they need a music therapist and then they can't find one. My advice to students is all the way through the curriculum in terms of knowing yourself and getting good information. So if you have a job offer, you take time to consider, but you find out everything about that job you can. What is the purpose of the agency? What do they emphasize? What do they think you would be doing? How have you been able to find out what their top priorities are? Have you been able to talk to any people who work there or who live there in that area? If you're having to move to a different town, would you be happy in that town? But I teach people to get as much information as you can and to know yourself well enough that if you know you're considering an agency that might restrict your ability to work with clients, or you're moving to a locale like Florida right now is having huge difficulty with being a therapist for clients and being able to discuss issues that have been legislatively made ineligible. And our therapists are angry about that. And the ones that are here are trying to figure out how to meet people's needs and not break the laws in Florida, hoping that the courts, because everything is being sued, that the courts will stop these bills from being implemented. But we also have people who are not moving to Florida. So I think it's a really good example of when you get information to know yourself and know, I would be miserable trying to deal with that right now in my career. I need to look for something else. Or to know what makes you happy. I talk with people about the joy of every day enjoying what you do. And so you really want to be in a hospital, but you got a job offer for mental health. And you see it as, oh gosh, I need a paycheck. I guess I'll do it, but I'm not enthusiastic. It might behoove you to wait just a little bit longer and go more aggressively after finding that hospital job. So knowing where to find out about jobs, there are so many resources on the internet now and so many ways to link in with music therapists on the internet that can tell you about jobs, or even with your faculty, because the universities get called all the time. We're looking for a music therapist. Weekly, we post job listings for people, and if our people email us and say, I'm looking for a job in, we just send them the bulletin right away. Here's one that you might want to consider. The opportunity to start your own practice if you're in a locale where you can't move and there's not a music therapy job, but there's something you want to do, start your own private practice and do it. So many people are doing that in the United States now. I'm just amazed at the percentage of music therapists that are in private practice, and they seem to be very happy doing it because they're their own bosses and they can schedule their own time. But I think that's the key, is knowing how to get the information about this particular job and what my beliefs are that would make me happy or make me thrive in this particular job. You can ask for a higher salary, you can ask for assistance with moving costs, you can say, I absolutely must have religious freedom for myself and I need these days off. All of those things are a part of who you are and how you want to balance all the parts of your life. That I also tell people they have every right and opportunity to get all of those things in place that they want to do with employment.
Looking forward, where do you imagine the profession continuing to grow? Where would you like to see it grow? And where do you see trends already occurring in the profession? And really what sticks out to you is what you would want to see going forward.
I think there's no question everything is moving toward neuroscience and music's impact on the brain. Unlike any other stimuli, it floods across both hemispheres of the brain. It causes the corpus callosum to grow. Who can say that their therapy actually enlarges a section of the brain? I mean, that to me is phenomenal and magical. And every other area, psychology particularly, medicine, are moving into research with music and looking at brain scans and the neuroscience of specific applications of music. But what worries me is none of it is based on music therapy research or psychology of music research or perception cognition research. And all of that wealth of information is lying there. And the medical doctor plays music for the premature baby that the medical doctor likes because the doctor likes Mozart and spent 13 years with piano lessons and learned to play Mozart and really loves it and thinks it would be great for babies. There's a man in Switzerland that composes Swiss bells music, and that's what he composes. And he read the research about NICU babies, so he plays the bells for the people in the NICU babies in Switzerland. The research shows that's the wrong music for tiny premature babies. Their neurologic system is not ready for that. When they're ready to go home from the hospital and they're more like term infants, that's okay, but not when they are tiny premature babies. And so what scares me is neuroscience with music is going to zoom forward, but I don't want it to leave out music therapist expertise yet again. And the younger music therapists who are doing research have got to attach themselves to a neuroscience researcher and get in there and be assertive and say, you're doing this all wrong. You're picking the music all wrong. You need to look at this research, and this is why you should structure it this way. We have been doing that at FSU with the neuroscience majors that are developing and the faculty doing research in that area. And all of our faculty members are picking an area of expertise that we sit down and start at the beginning with a really sophisticated researcher who thinks they know, and they tell us what they're going to do with music. And it's that advocacy again of, I don't want to alienate you. I want to connect with you. I want to assist you with your research, but I absolutely am not going to let you do what you're going to do and call that music therapy or say that it's valid music research and neuroscience. So I think that the field of music therapists has to make this transition. We have to leap into neuroscience research in our role of being experts and consultants on music's effect on the brain, and just stand people down who tell us, well, I'm a neurologist, I'm a music therapist, and just right back at you in your face. you don't know a thing about how music influences the brain. I can tell because you haven't read any of the literature and you can't even discuss it. You're a novice. I'm an expert at this. I'm not going to tell you how to read the MRI scan or what it shows about the brain itself. I am going to tell you what music does to the brain and what you should be doing in order to take a picture of it for your research. So I know I come off as really abrupt and overly assertive, and I'm not quite that assertive when I'm talking with other professionals, but I'm close. I'm close enough that they get it.
Yeah.
They get that this woman is not going to stand down. She is not going to accept from me, well, I'm a neurologist kind of attitude about I will do the research I want to do. Well, you'd be naive and you'd be wasting your money and you'd be wasting your time because there's a whole body of research that shows that you're way out in left field. Let me focus you a little bit more on how you could deal with the research question you want to deal with, but how you would use the music. Every music therapist needs to learn to do that. If you're in a hospital and there's a hospital that does research and they have funding and they want to do something with music, they're going to say, hey, we could do a research with study with music therapy. You've got to be there in that moment saying, yes, we could, and I can advise you about the music. Or if I can't, I can find somebody that would be a consultant that would tell you what you need to tell them, kind of thing. But we all need to be very wary because this is going to happen fast, because the results are going to be astounding, just like music therapy is astounding. And as the results start coming in, more and more money is going to be put into this, but it's going to be the researchers with experience in neurological research. They're going to get the money. The music therapists are going to be the consultants. We're not going to get the grants as music therapists. All of us at FSU are acting as NIH reviewers. That's another area of advocacy, to go to Washington, look at all the grant applications and to talk about the kind of collaboration that the researchers need with music therapy and what's good or wrong about their proposal. We have great credibility with that. But one of the things that we see is when music therapists ask for the study, it's not even really seriously being considered. If there's a neurologist that has had prior research grants from NIH with some health issue, who then collaborates with a music therapist, is being considered. But it's a very hard thing to do, to make that transition. It's going to take all of us. There's still so few of us. It takes all of us to jump in there and become an expert as quickly as we possibly can, and to get involved in that role.
Well, I think that was all of our questions. So we
Okay.
thank you so much for joining us here today, and for your time that you've spent with us, and all of your wisdom that you've shared, and what you've learned along the way and are looking forward to in the future.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me. I think it's a wonderful project. I'm so glad you're doing it. And I hope any of the students who watch it get what they're seeking out of it also. I know you all are spending time doing it, but great. It's a wonderful thing to do.
Yeah.
Thank you.